Glendale Boulevard, just going down Glendale Boulevard almost towards where Mayfair, and remembering things that were there.
Sure.
I don't know if that's is interesting too much at all. The other thing is, I don't know what my mother mentioned, that, I went to Midtown Elementary School, which was it used to be, the first location was on, it's Rowena, right, that runs, which I always get Hyperion and Rowena.
Well, Hyperion runs north-south, basically.
By the Gelsons. Okay, so Rowena. So it used to be there, but what's more knowledgeable now is, all those buildings that are underneath the Franklin Bridge, the Midtown. You guys, anyone ever talked about Midtown Elementary?
No.
But it's kind of, and then it was started by Reiner, who's, they built also the Lautner, Silvertop. And they before that lived in a marvelous house that's on the other side of Silver Lake, almost at the top of Effie there. It's at the very south end. It's kind of on the hill before the Garbett estate, but I don't know. It's on one of the walk streets. I know you've been by it, but it's a mansion there. It's all gated from the 20s, and it has a big swimming pool. And anyway, I remember that because when they moved, it was a big deal, and they invited everyone from the school. There was when they opened the home at Silvertop, and they all went up there. And I remember the big swimming pool and thinking, "Wow, this would be a great place." But
have a party.
Well, they always had parties, which was fun. I mean, the other thing I remember is that in the older house, on the 20s house, they once had a party and they had women dressed up as mermaids, and they had the whole mermaid costume.
Well, this is why we want to get this on tape. So let me tell you what we normally do.
Yes,
So what we normally do is we establish who you are and your background, what your relationship is to Silver Lake. This is an unusual interview in that it's a companion interview with your mom, and so it's kind of nice to have these two perspectives. And we got we had a great interview with her. She just what a wonderful lady she is. Oh man, and the house was so interesting. Yeah. So we really wanted to, we thought as the companion to talk to you about, growing up in that house and growing up in Silver Lake and your experiences there, and then also getting into the book business. And we wanted to come here because we wanted to see see the story. We'd like you to talk a little bit about this building too, and kind of, all that kind of stuff. So I'll kind of lead you, but you can,
if there's something I want to say, that's
absolutely
fine.
Feel free to bring up anything.
That's good, because it's better than just letting me ramble.
Okay, I'll go like this.
Yeah, right.
We're rolling.
Okay. Oh, hi. My name is Michael Masterson. I am here on behalf of the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council Oral History Collective. It's March 11th, 2010. We are here today interviewing Michael Dawson. His mother was our interview subject last week, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So this is a companion interview to kind of keep that going. Our cameraman today is the always capable Bob Herzog. And we've come to Larchmont to see Michael at his bookstore, Dawson's Books. And,
what's the address?
And what is the address here?
535 North Larchmont.
535 North Larchmont. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Michael and ask you a few questions. Sure. So you grew up in Silver Lake, obviously. Can you just kind of start with the beginning? Start at the hospital, kind of tell us where you were born.
Well, let's see. I believe I was born at Hollywood Presbyterian, January 1st, 1956. My parents had already built the first floor of their house.
On Hidalgo.
Right. So when I came home, I went there. Yeah, that was my first and only
home you ever
as a child. Yeah.
Right. And were you? What is your parents added onto the house and created the second floor? So how old were you when they kind of expanded the house?
I think I was several years old. I mean, I do have pictures around. My guess is I was probably 3 or 4 when they added on. My father built the whole bottom part himself. I mean, I think he had electricians and plumbers come in and do various things, but in the main, he built it all himself. So I remember, weekends and various things where he would just be hammering and nailing and sawing and various things. So, yeah.
So growing up in Silver Lake, tell us a little bit. Tell us where you went to school and what you.
Well, I first went to a nursery school that was right down on the same street where the Neutra house is. And I don't remember too much about that, but the house is still there. My mother might be able to tell you a little bit more. And then when I was
Which street was that?
It's the street that's between Glendale Boulevard and Silver Lake Boulevard.
Okay.
They're,
Dwayne or?
yeah, I'm afraid I don't remember the name,
Okay.
but it's wherever the Richard Neutra house
Okay,
is.
where Neutra Place goes off of now.
Exactly.
Yes, of course.
Maybe. So I went to a nursery school that was there. It was in a private home.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second school I went to was Midtown, which started from kindergarten to 6th grade, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started there, they had a small campus right on Hyperion, is that what we?
Mm-hmm.
And it was close to where the Edendale Grill is now.
Rowena.
What's on Rowena?
Yes,
yeah.
Rowena. Uh-huh.
And soon after that, they built their more elaborate campus, which was underneath the Franklin Avenue
The
Bridge,
Shakespeare Bridge.
the Shakespeare Bridge. And I went there from kindergarten through 2nd grade, and then I went to Clifford Elementary School,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went to Thomas Starr King Junior High School and Marshall High School.
Marshall High School.
Right.
Okay. Is the school under the bridge, is that the octagonal shaped building?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think it's a French school now.
It is, it's the French American Light Lycée.
Right, right.
Yeah. And then what, and you were telling us earlier about the family that was responsible
Yeah,
for that?
the Reiner, I can't remember their first names now, but the wife was very involved in progressive education, and so she founded the school. Her husband actually, as I remember, had his money in bobby pins. You know, he was a big bobby pin manufacturer. And I know his fortunes kind of waned when hairstyles changed and women didn't wear bobby pins anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But they had they had a very big house, sort of a 20 style on the east side of Silver Lake, and then they built Lautner's Silvertop, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was a big opening for that. And again, this is early 60s. I can't remember
Mm-hmm.
exactly. I was pretty young. So that was an interesting place to go to school. I have a lot of good memories of that. And my parents took me out of there when I was in 2nd grade and went over to Clifford Street, and then I was in public education through the rest of my time.
So, all Silver Lake.
All Silver Lake, yeah. We were on Hidalgo. That was a break right between where Ivanhoe and Clifford Street was.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone on my side of the hill and that far up went to Clifford as opposed to Ivanhoe.
Mm-hmm. Just it's interesting, talking to somebody who spent all their life in Silver Lake and has the experience of that, and also, growing up, primarily in the 60s, I guess would be your first kind of real memories of it. And what was it like then? I mean, we know we've talked to people in the past that we're kind of about the Sunset Junction area and things like that.
Yeah.
And did you go down to those places?
Not so much Sunset.
Where were you?
Sunset Junction. I mean, as a kid, my main parameters
Mm-hmm.
were probably as far south on Glendale Boulevard where it crests, or down where the Catholic school is, and probably as far north as Griffith Park.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's where I roamed.
Okay.
And so for going on bikes and various things, it was probably that sort of corridor between the southern tip of Glendale Boulevard and down where Fletcher and Glendale come together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a big deal for my friend and I to ride our bikes down. And before it was Astro, it was a place called Conrad's. The architecture is still the same, but we'd go down there and have lunch, and it would be a big deal.
Conrad's.
Yeah, Conrad's. It's still. I mean, I still go there. It's exactly interior-wise. Thank God they've kept it, because it's a pretty interesting bit of
googie.
Yeah, mid-century architecture.
And what was where the shopping center, where the Ralphs and all that is?
Well, there was a kind of what I would call a trailer court. I've seen postcards of it, but it was more like, it was filled with eucalyptus trees. There were several groves of eucalyptus trees in there. And it was always a place where your parents told you not to go in. It was a little seedy. They were, I don't remember a lot of trailers, but I do remember they had these beautiful little sort of board and batten houses, little shacks, that were kind of like the old cottages in Laguna Beach, if you know that kind of whitewash style. And it was in a little valley, so it wasn't, they kind of filled it in and flattened it, but it was down in a little bit of a hollow there. And I can remember when they must have evicted everyone, and before they tore it down, we went in there and we kind of could explore in the buildings, and I remember finding all kinds of old bills and receipts and just trash and stuff. But I remember that very well, particularly it was all filled with the eucalyptus trees.
Sure.
And but that was probably in the mid '60s. I don't remember when
So you were probably 9 or 10 years old or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, probably someone's told you about the drive-in, the little drive-in restaurant that was where the Bank of America is now.
Yeah.
I do remember that. There used to be a drive-in restaurant. Where that bank is now across the street, that's where my mother did a fair amount of shopping. It was a Thrifty Mart, and I remember the big T that was on top of that, because I could see it from my bedroom window. It was lit up at night, the big T. And there used to be some kind of star, I think it was something advertising a real estate office or something that was on, if you're on Glendale Boulevard looking south and you look up on the hill kind of above where they built those new condos, it's across from the library. There used to be some kind of like star that was electrified, and I think it was something for a real estate office, but I remember those are just, they're abstractly what I remember as a kid. Down where the ginger grass and that whole area used to be a bar called the Mixer. And then next to that was a barber shop that I used to go, you get your hair cut, and so you'd get, I remember getting the money, you'd go down and ride your bike down, get a haircut, and then we'd go to the liquor store, which is still there opposite the shopping center, right north of it, and you'd get your candy, and you'd buy comic books, and you'd go to the parking lot of the Bank of America, and you'd hang out and eat candy and read, because they were never open on Saturday. There were no banks open on Saturdays in those days.
Of course not.
Anyway, I could go on with those.
Was the Red Lion Tavern there then, or was that something?
Yeah, that was there.
That was still that was what.
Yeah, that was there. I remember that. And the bar that's across of that, I think, used to be a place called the Thistle Inn or something. I don't remember too much about that. Oh, then of course there was where they built that house there on Glendale near Bancroft. That used to be just a big empty field that we play in, and there used to be, it was a really a marker for that part of Silver Lake. There used to be a big stone lion or a marble lion that was up there. I'm sure my mother would remember that. It was, I don't know what it was for, whether there used to be a house there, a mansion or something, but under that oak tree that's still there near Bancroft, there was a big stone lion. It was always something that I remember coming up the hill. You'd look for it, you could see it from the street.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever heard about that before.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how big it was, but it was a white, marble or whitewashed stone lion, kind of something you'd have seen on a teens or 20s building at some point, but someone had put it in there.
Or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah, but I don't know if there was anything there.
By the way, go on, because we haven't had this viewpoint before
No.
of a child who grew up during the 60s.
Okay,
Yeah.
well then I can
Silver Lake.
I've sort of told you everything I remember sort of from Glendale Boulevard down to Fletcher.
Did you go? Were you on Hyperion much? Was the Hub Market there?
Yeah. My mother used to go to the Hub Market. I remember going there many, many times. In fact, it's funny. I still, whenever I go to Trader Joe's, I always think, God, it seems so much bigger to me when it was the Hub Market. And the place is always so crowded when you go in there. But yeah, the Hub Market was there, and that little building where the shoe repair and Say Cheese, those were all there. I don't remember what was there. I have no idea I know it used to be Disney Studios, but I don't believe there was a market where Gelson's is. I don't remember what was there. I mean, my mother might remember, but I don't remember that as a market at all. There used to be, when I was in high school, what's now the Burrito King, there was a place called Teddy's, and everyone used to go there after school and get a hamburger or whatever. But as far as, there was I don't know whether it's an apartment building, but again on the same side of Rowena, where the Edendale Grill is, there used to be a place called the Dakota Club, which was a boys and girls club. And I remember they're going there for summer programs and swimming lessons. They had a big swimming pool in the front there.
So that was on Rowena on the same side of the street as the Edendale, which was a fire station then. I believe.
Yeah, it was very close to that. And I think that they may have torn that down and built an apartment building and filled in the swimming pool, but it was a little kind of building. And I do remember, I was telling Bob, the trestle for the red car before they took that down. And that
it spanned from near Fletcher to
right across there. It was just, I mean, the trains didn't run anymore, but every time you'd go through underneath the bridge.
Right.
And we used to ride our bikes still on the old right-of-way, particularly on the south side of Fletcher, which is where I lived. We would go down the back of Bancroft, and you would just ride along the dirt path. It's still kind of the same. And then you'd just kind of come up the back street there and come, back on Silver Ridge in that area, and you'd, just kind of ride around, and that was a lot of fun.
Did kids ever try to cross on the trestle?
At that point, I think by the time I remember riding a bike, that was gone. I mean, it wasn't that much of a memory, but I think because we used to go to the Curry's ice cream parlor. I loved that as a kid, which was where home is now.
Oh, okay.
That same building, it was, Curry's was a big, before Baskin Robbins, at least they had a number of them. They used to have one on the corner of Virgil and Silver Lake. There was a Curry's. We never went to that one, but as a kid, it was so much. It was really little. You remember going to get ice cream, and
what was memorable about the chain, was the fact that they had a huge ice cream cone as their symbol, and several people have remembered that.
Oh yeah, it was a pink building with a big ice cream cone on top,
exactly,
and neon lighting that said Curry's. So that was on that corner. Somewhere down there, before they built the freeway, before they built the 5, my father said there was a drive-in movie theater. I don't remember that. In fact, I don't remember anything before the 5 was built. My mother probably, did. But that I don't remember. And then there was a place on Riverside Drive called People's Hardware that's near where that Repertory Theater is now.
The Colony?
Yeah, and I went there a ton with my dad because that's where he went to buy all his stuff, or over at, I don't know what the lumberyard now, but on San Fernando used to be Fleming and Hightower, and that's where he bought all his lumber, so we would go seeming like forever over there. And then my father was a Christian Scientist, and he was very active in a small church that was in Atwater. So they built, it's a small building, I think the building is still there, it's pretty close, it's off Glendale Boulevard pretty soon after you cross over the river. So I remember going over to Atwater a lot. The thing that's really, I went away to college, I was out not living in Southern California between 1975 and 1985. And the thing that I remember the most when I came back was that there was a different feel to the neighborhood in terms of people discovering it, I guess. I don't know how to say it any differently. Perhaps this is something that other people have talked to who lived there in the 60s or 70s. Silver Lake was really not a big deal. It wasn't it wasn't a phenomenon in a sense, or it wasn't an East Side neighborhood that
a chic area.
Exactly. But it's always had, and you could say the same for Echo Park, it always had a little bit of a bohemian feeling to it. The thing that I always remember is that, I didn't think about it then, but like when I went to Clifford Street, obviously we had a lot of, Chicano kids, but we had a lot of Japanese. And we had a few Russians, Moluccans, the Moluccan community that used to be up in the hills in various places. And that was not really that, if you'd grown up in the San Fernando Valley, you probably didn't find, you could talk to people. They didn't go to school with a lot of Japanese kids because they weren't allowed to live a lot of places. So they moved back into Silver Lake because no one bothered them.
Yeah.
And
well, my understanding was that after the war, there were no covenants against Asians owning land and owning houses in Silver Lake where there weren't other parts of LA.
That is probably true. That's not something that I
Okay.
would have remembered, but I mean, the fact is that I remember, in fact, one of my earliest friends was a Japanese girl who lived in one of the Neutra houses that are right off Silver Lake Boulevard.
Yes.
And so, I don't
In
remember.
that group of 4 houses, yeah, I know her mother actually.
O'Hara.
She's still there. She still lives there.
It's June O'Hara,
Yeah,
I think.
I think, yeah.
Well, anyway, her daughter was Jill O'Hara.
Mhm.
They had a younger daughter, and I guess we went to Midtown together. But I have a lot of great memories of going to their house and playing, and
Mhm.
being in that kind of. It felt like home in some ways because my house was kind of like that too. You kind of felt like everyone kind of lived in those sort of houses because
Mhm.
there was a fair amount of them.
In the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, the people that lived next door to us, Lewis and Edith Gross, who built that other house that's
Mhm.
kind of a modern house over the hill next to my mother's. So it was, but there were I remember a lot of older people who must have built their houses in the 20s that were, felt really old to me in the 60s. There was a fellow, Richie, who lived right up at the corner of Bancroft and Hidalgo, who had the little white house that's right up on the top. There was an older woman, Mrs. Olivas, who drove a VW, and every time she'd go around every corner, beep, beep, and we used to call her the beep, beep lady.
Like your mother mentioned.
Yeah, the beep, beep lady, she's beep, beep, oh, here comes Mrs. Olivas, going up the hill. And then, of course, Anais Nin, lived down there, and Rupert Pole, and I didn't know who they were, except that every evening they would walk their dogs and come up the hill, and if we'd be playing, my dad put a little basketball thing on the top of their, he wasn't an architectural purist, but on the top of his very nice garage, he, sutured on a basketball hoop so we could play basketball in the driveway there. And, they'd come up and talk, and Rupert Pole taught at Thomas Starr King Junior High School. So, sorry. He played, I think, viola or something. He had like a quartet, and
We're talking about Rupert Pole. I didn't get your intro to that. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Rupert Pole, who was married or lived with Anais Nin, and as I mentioned previously, he taught science or something, biology at Thomas Starr King Junior High School. Mm-hmm. I remember that I did orchestra in junior high school, and our orchestra teacher played cello, and I think she used to play in the quartet that they would have practices in the house and things. So, it was just an interesting group of people that lived there.
Were there any other notable artists or celebrities that lived around there that you grew up with? Or
not that I can remember. She is the only one that I found out later was someone who was very well known.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of anyone else. I mean, the other aspect of it was I remember, two people that lived next door to us were single men. Mm-hmm. And, it didn't think anything about it at the time, but I realized that they were probably gay. Mm-hmm. And that was another thing. That was just a part of the fabric of the community. Mm-hmm. Everyone would have known, but no one cared.
Right.
And so that was another group of disenfranchised people who could live in Silver Lake and not be bothered.
Not be judged by it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
Mm-hmm. So there's a high level of tolerance.
I would think that that's probably a good description of it. Uh-huh. Yeah.
It could also have been don't ask, don't tell in terms of ethnicity, sexuality, and all of that.
Sure. I'm too young to really comment on that too much, but just what I remember is that no one treated them any differently. We all knew they were the neighbors, and my parents talked to them, and they, just wasn't any big deal. There wasn't any big deal. There was no issue. Whereas I think, again, if you'd moved into suburban Burbank in 1956, and you didn't have a family or you didn't have a wife, people would probably start asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, right.
yeah, that aspect of it was, it just provided you a lot of, I guess, freedom as a kid. We had open fields to roam around in. There were no other houses on the hill there, which is what that film that I have shows, because we used to play a lot in these 2 lots that are now built up, or all of the lots now are built next to my mother.
Tell us about that film.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what about the film?
Well,
about a day on
yeah,
Hidalgo
I
Street?
had 2 friends who lived on Hidalgo or Bancroft. They were about my age, and we did everything together. You know, one lived.
Who were they?
Well, it was the Davies family, which was at. They actually have the house that I think Lewis McAdams bought on Hidalgo. And their father was an architect or landscape designer for the LA Unified School District, and he built several houses. He built the first one, which is at the corner of Bancroft and Teviot. You know, that's a nice kind of wood and redwood and kind of modernist mid-50s style. And then he built the duplexes, the 2 apartments that are a little bit further up on Bancroft. And then he finally built his own home, again, a new home, which is up at Hidalgo just before it kind of goes up the hill. And it was Billy Davies and his daughter and his sister Julie, who were friends of mine, and I'm still friends with them. There was another fellow, John Chapaton, who I believe his sister still lives in their family home on Bancroft. So anyway, I don't know how I got interested in making movies, but my parents got me a Super 8 camera, and I read books on like how to make a film. So we just we had a lot of fun, and we just photographed what we did, you know, in a day. I don't really remember. I haven't seen it in a long time, but there's shots of us riding our bikes on that hillside there, and, you know, making jumps with the bikes and playing basketball and football and just some funny other little things. My cousin used to come and stay with us a lot in the summer, and he lived in San Pedro, and so he's in the film, and we used the houses, and we just, you know, we did all kinds of funny little things like that. And I made other films too that were not so specific, but I think that the parents enjoyed it, and they always wanted us to show it, and it was just a kind of a neighborhood thing that we did.
Well, we hope we can get that transferred and add it to our archive.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. I have no problem with that. That would be great.
Let me ask you about, what did you do for entertainment? Where did your parents go out? Where did you go to eat? What kind of stuff? Did you go to Disneyland as a kid? I mean,
well, sure. I mean, we went to, I mean, it was a big deal to go to Disneyland.
Sure.
And we went maybe once or twice a year. I usually got to go around my birthday and sometime in the summer. It was funny with my son growing up. He had no interest in Disneyland. It was funny, and so I never really went once he was growing up. But I loved it as a kid.
Sure.
It was a really wonderful thing. So we did go to Disneyland maybe twice a year. Wasn't real big on Knott's Berry Farm, but we did go to Disneyland. We went to the beach a fair amount. My mother was not a real beach person, but
Which beach?
Santa Monica, pretty much, around Pacific Ocean Park, which I remember very well. They used to have those little motorized carts that old guys used to drive with sailor hats on, and they were free rides between one part of the couple of the piers there along the ocean where the bike paths are. But my mother, when she first came to California, lived with a family in Santa Monica, so she still had friends down there. And her father lived in a number of kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't call them derelict hotels, but sort of like old Victorian buildings that had been cut up into apartments. And he moved a lot between like Redondo Beach and Santa Monica, so we would go down there and visit him on occasion. And so I remember going to the beach a lot. As far as going out to dinner, people, as I recall, didn't really go out to dinner as much, or at least families. It was a bigger deal to go out.
Right.
I can't really remember. There really wasn't that many restaurants in Silver Lake at the time.
Right.
You know, you didn't really have anything except maybe Conrad's, the coffee shop.
Sure.
There were no other restaurants that I
Did you
can
go to
remember.
the Tam O'Shanter or anything like that?
No, we didn't go to the Tam O'Shanter. We used to go to Ernie Jr.'s Taco House a lot, which used to be on, they moved it onto the other side of Colorado, but before they built the two, it was kind of there, but a little bit different, and that was a big deal because you'd have to drive all the way up through Eagle Rock. There was no freeway, and it seemed like as a kid it took forever, so we went there a lot. Occasionally we would eat downtown because my father would be working, and then my mother, after I went to started going to Midtown, she worked in the business.
Wow.
So they would be down there, and there was a Hamburger Hamlet downtown on 6th Street or somewhere there that we used to go to a lot.
Clifton's?
No,
More cafeteria people.
no, we didn't go there. We used to go to some Japanese restaurants downtown. My father was doing a lot of business with Japanese dealers, and they would come in, and so we would take them to nice restaurants in Japantown. And I remember.
So were you eating sushi as a child?
No, I didn't eat. I don't remember what I ate, but I mean, it was not sushi. I don't remember that.
Sure, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go into Hollywood much to go to see movies?
Yeah, we would go to Hollywood to see movies. I remember that, but more Glendale.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I went with my mother to a movie when I was real young, we went to Hollywood. But as by the time we were old enough to be just dropped off at the movie theaters, we'd always go to Brand. And Glendale was the absolutely most sleepy little place on earth back then. And they had movie theaters from one end to the other, and they were all had matinees, and you'd just get dropped off there. And I saw the James Bond movies, and so we mainly went to as kids went to Glendale.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So, anything else that did your family take trips? Did you do? I know your family was very involved. Your ancestors were very involved in the Sierra Club and things like that. Did you do camping trips, things like that?
Yeah, we did a lot of that. My parents had a folk dance group that they belonged to called the Mountain Dancers, and they were much more active in that than they were in the Sierra Club when I was younger, and they all had kids. So it seemed like at least once a month they had some kind of Sunday or Saturday event. A lot of it had to do with being in the mountains, but sometimes we'd go to the beach, and they would, or various people's houses, and they would have parties. For many years in Easter, we used to take a trip to Arizona, different parts of Arizona, car camping. We did a lot of, like car camping and various things, but I think primarily that was their social network, so I remember going out, spending a lot of times outdoors in Southern California. It was great. Yeah.
Did you spend a lot of time in your dad's bookstore?
Well, not so much. I was in school. I would go down and help him do things at various times.
Was the store still downtown?
It was until '67. It was down at 6th and Figueroa opposite the Jonathan Club, and that building was torn down when they built the Arco Towers. And the old Atlantic Richfield building was there. That was. I still remember that very well. I remember Angel's Flight.
Hotel, right? Is that
well, no, it's right where the Atlantic Richfield building is where the Arco Towers are now, because they tore down that whole thing and then built the two larger buildings. But I remember going to, the big thing was, and again, it's sort of reflection of the time, but they would get a quarter or a nickel or whatever the amount is, and he'd say, well, I'll go take a little walk. And, I would go down one side and then go up Angel's Flight, and then I would walk down through Bunker Hill neighborhood and then come back to the store just as something to do. And used to ride skateboards down there if I'd go down on a Saturday with him and do different things.
They used to allow children to go out unaccompanied.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah, you could just kind of roam around and do different things. And,
that doesn't happen anymore, I don't think.
Well, not as much. Not as much. Yeah.
That's good. So how did you get? You were gone for 10 years. Where were you?
Right. Well, I went to first. I went to after high school. I went to UC Berkeley, and then I transferred to UC Santa Cruz, and I was there about 3 years, and I graduated from there in '78, and then I went to live in San Francisco. And I got married there, and I met my wife in college, and we were married in '84, and then we moved back down here in '85. My wife went and got a PhD in art history at UCLA, and I started working in the business. I wasn't sure that it was going to be something I wanted to do, but I did, and I enjoyed it. And I've made a lot of changes over the years, and there's been a lot of changes in the business, and still a lot of changes. I'm wrapping up the business in some ways. My mother might have mentioned this, I don't know, but I'm moving much more into sort of service business appraisal and doing different things. And I'll always deal a bit, but probably more privately. The kind of the retail aspect for books has just disappeared with the advent of internet marketing, and the rare and collectible things, you don't really need an open store. And I'm just getting older, and I want to do things differently.
Is that your focus? What is the focus of what you're
Well, my knowledge base is both in fine art photography and rare books in California history and photography.
Mhm.
So I tend to go after things in those areas, and that's what I most specialize in. I mean, I have more, we used to have a lot more general books in a whole lot of different subjects, but they're devaluing at such a rapid rate that there's no point in handling them at all.
How long have you been in this location?
Well, we've been here since they built the building in '67, moved in 1968.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who designed this?
He's still alive. He's a friend of my family named Alfred Wilkes, Wilkes. He's done, I think, primarily residential and maybe some apartment buildings and different things on the west side of Los Angeles. But yeah, we've loved this building. It's been very good for us over the years.
Building.
Yeah,
Really extraordinary.
Yeah.
Are there any other tenants in it, or is it just?
No, it's just us.
Uh-huh. No, it's really, really a wonderful, wonderful space.
Yeah.
And so you're moving more towards appraisals and online.
Yeah, I'm doing service-based business. I buy and sell things all the time. It's just that I feel that I don't need the overhead of a big retail space.
Right.
And it was good for the book business for many years, but it's not a destination location yet. I mean, Larchmont is getting there, upper part of Larchmont, but it's just not. It's not going to be in my lifetime.
Yeah. Not on the footpath, really.
Right.
So as we
Right, exactly, yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's a wonderful building. We'll do a little video tour of
Sure.
that too. So.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you can remember that you?
Well, I think I've sort of told you all of the things that I kind of remember as what was there. I think probably some of my earliest memories are all the wonderful eucalyptus trees. Now, I know people have different feelings about the good pros and cons of
I've
eucalyptus.
got one that needs trimming, right?
Yeah, exactly. But we, at the bottom of their lot, we had a couple of really big ones, and I don't know, it's sort of an abstract thing, but I just remember the smell of them and the leaves, and it's one of my earliest memories. And there were so many of them around Silver Lake at the time, and just kind of the openness of the landscape, and the views of looking out at. I mean, my bedroom was on the top floor, and I looked out through the eucalyptus trees. They had smaller ones planted around the house that got real tall, down to Silver Lake at night, and it was just a really beautiful experience. And in those days, they still had the old teardrop lights around the lake, and it had sort of a beautiful kind of warm glow. I remember the night that Richard Neutra's house caught on fire.
The VDL house, Oh, really? I never heard that.
And I just remember waking up and hearing the screaming of sirens and flames coming up, and I don't know what was lost at that particular time. I mean, the house was saved, but there was some kind of fire there.
Is that the one on Silver Lake Boulevard?
Yes.
Yeah, his own home.
His own home there. It's sort of on that.
Well, now it's kind of a historic landmark, and they have architectural studios.
Cal State Pomona, I think, owns it.
Yeah,
Oh, do they?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, but I do remember that.
Any other notable?
I
What about do you remember the LA riots, or were you too young for that?
Just barely. I mean, I kind
Not
of
the
remember.
ones- not the
No,
one
I know,
that came ones, but the-
65,
yeah,
66. I mean, I remember watching things on television.
I was there, National Guard.
Oh gosh! Wow! We can interview you next.
Yeah. So I don't really. That was
Didn't
something.
impact you work-wise.
No, I mean much more the '91 where they had
Of course. Yeah.
guards stationed around the market at Echo Park and Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question for you. When you were a boy, let's say 10, 11, 12, what were your favorite TV programs? Can you remember back?
Yeah,
then?
I mean, if that's of interest to anyone, I mean, I loved Lost in Space. I think that was one that I watched a lot. The Wild Wild West. I liked Green Acres and Petticoat Junction and Beverly Hillbillies. I mean, that was a period of time. If anyone of my generation, if you start talking about what things that you watched, I mean, the earliest thing that I remember is my mother really liked Perry Mason, and we would watch that together. And I remember I'd be sitting up, or our TV was upstairs and kind of close to where my bedroom was. And I could watch the first half, but I always fell asleep when they went to the trial. And I'd have to ask her what happened,
He always won.
Well, yeah, that's true. He always won.
The ending was always the same.
So, Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, but we had a black and white set, so that was kind of great to watch the peacock in black and white. But anyway,
That's really funny. Mm-hmm. I just thought of something I wanted to ask you. What was your first car? When did you start driving?
I had a VW Bug that I bought from the fellow that was my father's architect on the house. They were both in the church together, so and I remember it didn't have a gas gauge, but it had a kickover tank. It was probably a late 50s VW, and I think I drove to New York and back in that thing, and so it lasted really well. I had a number of VWs, Yeah, that was my first car. And then
you had also mentioned that you had met your wife, and can you tell a little bit, just for the continuity of your mom, so your wife and you have a son?
Yeah, we have one son who's almost 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. What's your wife's name?
Andrea Liss.
Okay. And your son?
Miles Liss Dawson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. List, L-I-S-T?
L-I-S-S.
L-I-S-S,
Yeah.
Liss. Okay. Just for future historians, so we can track him down.
Yeah, they have to go over to Hawaii and get him.
I don't know, any other questions, Bob, or you think we...
I think we've
It's
done
been a
it.
wonderful interview. Thank you so much.
Sure.
It really gave us a great insight into Silver Lake that we haven't had before from a new perspective, so
Great.
we really appreciate it a lot.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, here we are looking at the signage in front of Dawson's bookstore, the Michael Dawson Gallery. I hope the backlight doesn't obliterate this. And the Dawsons have been in the book business since 1905. Okay, we're looking at a shot of the front of the building, which is on Larchmont Boulevard. There's Michael Dawson. It's a beautiful building built in 1967, post and beam style. We're going to go up a little bit closer now. Here's a little added extra special. This is Michael Masterson's 66 Mustang convertible, which goes like a shot out of hell, as I learned coming over here from Silver Lake. It's a beautiful car, well maintained. Okay, inside shot. Restored interior. Okay, let's get back to the book business. Here's a pan of the front of the building. That's Michael Dawson in the background. There's a little atrium entrance here with the globe lighting, which is very characteristic of the post and beam construction period. And here's the front door. I'm standing in the trellised area of the entry outside.
Hi, I was just talking to Michael about this. He had a gallery opening recently and has help with his book.
Well, yeah, it's an artist that I know. Got a book published on for photographs and historical work on what they call the Jackrabbit homesteads up in the, I believe it's more in the Mojave Desert and 29 Palms area. But essentially, the government was, I think, started in the 1930s, started giving tracts of land to people who would put these small homes on it, and then there were companies that would build various styles of homes, little small things, and she has a nice display of some of the, historical developers that were doing that. But then a lot of them became abandoned, but people used them as weekend vacation homes and various things, and now there's a whole movement of various artists and writers and various people who use them as second homes.
Retreat studios.
Exactly, so she documents both what's there in terms of the abandoned ones and the ones that people have restored and fixed up and who lives there. Yeah, at least on a part-time basis. Yeah. Sure.
Anything else you'd like to show us or tell us about the shop?
Well, it's basically I have the gallery area and I have books on California history and photography, some just out of print things and some nice rare and collectible books. I have the first monograph published on Edward Weston's photographs in 1932. It was a whole big project of kind of an LA arts scene.
Mhm.
We have some early things on Los Angeles, and that's kind of what my interest is and what I kind of find myself. 19th and 20th century fine art photography, and I represent a couple of artists who do projects together.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful space.
Yeah.
It's really incredible. Was it?
We had a whole big row of sort of wood bookcases that were in the back that came from the original Bancroft Library. I think those cases were from the 1870s or 80s, if I'm not mistaken. Around 2000, I wanted to kind of remodel and open up the space a little bit. We used to have kind of tracks of neon lighting like I have in the office, and I just wanted to open up the space, and I put in the track lighting, and I do a fair amount of film shoots here. I do 2 to 3 a year on average, mostly television shows, but some films, and it works for them because it's modular and they can do different things with it.
It's nice open space. They can
exactly.
do what they want. So, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I might want to mention I have this interesting painting here. Someone if you haven't interviewed, maybe it's Charles Phoenix. Have you talked?
Sure, I know Charles Phoenix.
Yeah, well, Charles is a good friend of mine. I used to have this painting upstairs, and one time we were doing something. He says, "You have to put this painting right here in front when people walk in." And it's a painting by a fellow named Clarence Ellsworth, who's a reasonably well-known Western artist. And the painting was commissioned, I guess, in 1959 by my uncle, Glenn Dawson. And it's from a photograph that shows my uncle, who's here, my grandfather, my uncle and my grandmother. And this was in front of my grandfather's second shop on Hill Street, opposite Pershing Square. And the little boy that my grandfather's holding in his arms is my uncle, who is now 97, almost 98 years old.
Do you know what year the original photograph was taken?
I'm going to guess it was around 1916, 1917
kind
or
of
so.
From her dress, I would guess,
Yeah.
around that time.
Right.
Not much later.
So that's kind of has this little shrine.
Do you know what the London bookshop refers to?
No, it was something that my grandfather must have had several partnerships with people at different times, and it could be that was another store that was there. I'm afraid I don't really know.
Okay.
But I've recently given all the business archives as well as some scrapbooks and other things to the UCLA Department of Special Collections, because they had an archive of. They had when my grandfather passed away in '48, a lot of his correspondence was given to them, and some of his friends, both book collectors and other dealers, established an endowment fund which still funds some small purchases.
Sure.